Good evening. Welcome to Open Mic Debate Night, sponsored by the Georgia Southern chapter of Turning Point USA. My name is Thomas Puckoff. I am the faculty advisor for Turning Point USA here on campus. And I've been here for 18 years. I'm an associate professor of accounting. I have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in accounting. I'm a CPA, certified fraud examiner, and certified in financial forensics, and have my own consulting practice. It's my pleasure to be the moderator for this event tonight. So as part of that, I'm going to lay out 6 rules, and so that we can have a polite, respectful, and civil discussion. The first rule is to listen to understand, not to respond to what the speaker is saying. We are trying to understand each other's points of view, and we'll accept that it's okay if somebody has a different point of view from our own. Number 2, listen respectfully without interrupting. Number 3, criticize ideas, not individuals. Number 4, avoid blame, speculation, inflammatory language, and name calling. Number 5, comment in order to share information, not to persuade. It's unlikely we'll persuade many people of a different way of thinking, but who knows? Maybe we will. And number 6, allow everyone the chance to speak. So those are the rules. I've taped a copy of the rules on the front of the podium, which I noticed you can't really see from the back. But anyway, it will be my job to moderate, and in the event that I perceive one of the rules as being violated, I will assist, moderate the process so that we can get back to a civil discussion. All right, so without further ado, I will introduce Ben Mincy, who is the president of the Turning Point USA chapter here on campus. So, Ben.
Yep. Good evening, everybody. Like you said, my name is Ben Mincy. I'm a sophomore international studies major, and I am the president of Turning Point USA Georgia Southern. And I'd also like to welcome every one of you. We got big things happening at Turning Point USA Georgia Southern, so if you're interested, come find me after this event, come find anybody up here after this event, and we'll get you plugged in with our GroupMe and everything else. And feel free to check out the merch table in the back corner. I think that's all I got.
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay Richardson and I am a freshman here at Georgia Southern University. This is obviously my first year at Turning Point and I serve as a secretary. I am a information systems major and I'm so excited for everyone to be here and to have great discussions with all of you.
Hey y'all, my name is John Shaw. I'm a journalism major junior here at Georgia Southern University, and I'm going to be talking to y'all about taxes, and we're going to hopefully just have a great discussion in between whoever wants to talk about taxes, and I'm what they call a free market capitalist, even though that's kind of the same thing. In fact, it's exactly the same thing, free market and capitalism. And fair warning, I'm a Christian, and that is where my views and opinions will come from. So take that into warning, and without further ado, my brother.
Hey y'all, my name is Grayson Shaw. I'm a finance major here at Georgia Southern. I'll be talking about socialism and a little bit about why I don't support it, and I also serve as the treasurer.
I think your back's muted.
One more thing on that is we're going to try to keep debates and under 5 minutes a person. And our first topic of tonight is going to be socialism. So, Grayson,
Yes, sir.
take it away.
All right, so I'm familiar with Marxist socialism mostly. I've done a little bit of reading on the history of it overall, and it's pretty interesting. But the crux of it comes down to it's supposed to be, as written by Marx, a bridge to communism, which is a stateless, classless, and moneyless society. The points of this is to create equality of income among people, and it's something that it sounds good at first. However, I don't really agree with the principles that socialism and communism take to get to that point. For instance, they believe that private property should be illegal. Nobody should be able to own something like a house. They also believe that it's okay to steal those things from people in order to redistribute them. For those reasons, primarily, I'm against it, and I support free market systems. Questions are
Bobby Shad.
I have a question. Do you want me to go to the mic to ask it, or do you want me to?
Yes, We're gonna hold the mic too.
So you mentioned socialism, and you talk about how it is in communist countries, and the things that you're talking about with redistribution of property and everything. I think that a lot of us can agree that that's not good. And we look at history, and those places that have implemented true socialist places have kind of collapsed. We've seen that in the Soviet Union. However, that's one of y'all's big talking points at Turning Point is against socialism. So my question is, in America, what are ways that you're seeing socialism, and what are potential programs that are being implemented right now that y'all have an issue with that it could be borderline socialist?
okay. Thank you for your question. That's actually a really good one. And I get questions like that a lot of times from people who lean left. They ask, could certain forms of socialism flourish in the United States, like a healthcare system or a housing system or something like that? And the way that I would respond to it is, while that might fall under certain categories of socialism, it wouldn't fall under Marxist category, which is basically trying to get into a stateless, classless, and moneyless society. So I would argue that, while the healthcare system might have aspects of socialism to it, that the U.S. as a whole is not socialist as a result of that, if that makes sense. So these are things to look out for. You want to keep your markets free. You want to have people be able to make decisions for themselves and to basically control their own lives instead of it being controlled by bureaucrats and the government. And so you want to watch out for that. However, as a whole, I just want to make it clear that socialism is not the goal of the U.S. government at the time, but there are certain policies that people who are socialists would like to see implemented.
I'll add to that real quick. So one thing that we see as socialist is a tax system. What we have currently is a socialist tax bracket where the more money you make, the higher percentage of taxes you pay. We don't think that's how it should be. We think everybody should pay the same percentage of taxes out of their income. And we'll get into a little bit more about that next topic, because that is our next topic.
Yes, sorry. We will get into that on taxes, so we'll get in a little bit to the income tax bracket during that point in time.
Any follow-up questions or clarifications necessary on socialism? Did I answer your question adequately, sir?
You did. I would just like wondering if you could name one specific socialist promotion or policy in place right now besides taxes.
Right, so I would say that the healthcare system, trying to provide free healthcare to people, would be, I guess, technically classical socialist, like St. Simon's kind of socialism. So it's interesting that you see that kind of stuff. It's also interesting that you see people like in other forms of government subsidies, like take farmer loans and stuff like that. That would essentially be a form of socialism, because the government would be taking risks with other people's capital that people would not be willing to risk on their own.
Also, one more thing, and then we'll probably move on. The whole thing about us thinking in socialism, we're trying to stop what went down in Venezuela, what went down in any given socialist economy that collapsed. We're really trying to get it stopped before it really even gets started in the first place. There's it. There.
Hi, my name is Lacey. My pronouns are they, them. I'm over here representing our developing sorority, KKC. And my question was, I'm a Peruvian American, and so are my parents. And recently my dad lost his arm when he was deployed. And it's been really difficult in this economy to actually get funds to get him a new arm. And we just simply believe that in socialist countries, this problem isn't as present. So what do you think an alternative would be in a system like ours instead?
Sure. And that's a good question, and that's a lot of the reason why socialism gets brought up, because you have examples of people have tough break and they can't really find a whole lot of help, and so they think the government's going to help me. And essentially, it brings upon this involuntary tax upon the taxpayers to pay for something that they may not have known about, but they really just didn't want to pay in the first place. And that's kind of the moral argument that I would have a problem with socialism with. I definitely support people helping each other out. I definitely support people that have the means helping each other out, and I think that that's a cultural issue here in the U.S. I think it's a cultural issue around the world. I don't think that allowing the government to basically have the authority to come in and say, I'm going to take your money and pay for this thing that I want to pay for, I don't think that's moral. I'm sorry about what's happening with your dad. I know that's a difficult situation. However, I don't believe that the government is the solution to problems like that. There are other ones sometimes you got to pray about, but that's the best I got for you.
But for those people who have experienced things like that, is my dad just supposed to go without an arm because he can't get the money to find a bionic arm of value? What are we supposed to do for those people who are in those tough situations? Do we just let them live a life that's just not as fair as everyone else's?
Well, first of all, life isn't fair, and some people lose their arms and some don't, and that sucks. And that's just how it is. However, your dad can find other sources of getting his arm replaced. And if that money is coming from the government, why can't he get it from somewhere else? So that's just my question.
Gotcha. Does anyone else on the board have a suggestion for people like that?
So you can start like a GoFundMe or something along those lines that maybe figure out how much money that he might need to raise for his bionic arm and set up a GoFundMe for that. And I know tons of people that would be willing to donate to that as a good cause. So definitely would recommend that. Anybody else?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? And if you think, go ahead. And while I still up, if you do think of another question, while we're, after we moved on to the next topic, we'll come back and we'll just say, hey, has anybody thought of another question on one of these topics that you came up with after we moved on? So, go ahead.
So I'll preface this by, I'm not a socialist, but there's a part of the argumentation which is weird to me, which is when we identify in any of these situations this component of taking something to give to someone else for the greater good, that you seem to be saying that it should always be voluntary. And I'm wondering if this is some sort of like categorical claim where you're saying always in every situation, where there's any redistribution, it has to be voluntary. Like if I was to ask you, if there was someone who invented the cure for cancer, but wanted to keep it for himself, right, and didn't want to give it to anybody, would you say that it would be right to take it to like save potentially billions of lives?
That's a good question. It doesn't really relate to socialism.
Well, it does, because you're saying that there's this underlying principle, which is like why you're against policies like this healthcare, or these tax brackets, which are heavier tax brackets on people who have more money. It's because of this principle, this underlying principle, that it seems to be never okay to take away money to help people who might need it more. And I'm wondering if like you would apply this principle in all situations, or if you have some way to adjudicate between those situations where you apply this principle, where you don't apply this principle.
Okay, sure. So I'll just say it like this. History has proven that people who are stingy with what they have, they can help other people. It doesn't end too well for them. I mean, there might be certain people who has benefited, and there are definitely certain people, if you look back at like the French Revolution, who it doesn't. Can you imagine if people found out that somebody had the cure for cancer and they weren't giving it out because they just wanted it? That'd be a problem. It would be unethical for them, and I completely agree with that. However, what gives you the right to take it from them?
So you would say even in that situation, you ought not take the cure for cancer?
Yeah, I think that stealing is wrong.
So I would say that like any type of moral system which has that as an entailment of it just seems very like obviously false. And I'll just like end what I'm saying right there.
That's fine.
Next question on socialism. All right, we'll move on to taxes. So we're going to talk a little bit about the tax brackets, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we think as a group here at Turning Point that we should not have to pay for what we don't want to pay for in taxes, and be able to pay for what you do want to be able to pay for. So let's say that there's a bridge, for instance, that is a useless bridge, and you're building it from, let's say, your house to the park, and everybody else is having to pay for this supposed bridge that's going specifically from your house to the park. Nobody else is going to use this bridge except for you, and it's only affecting you in one way, but everybody else is having to pay for it. So that is our opinion on taxes. We're going to open it up for debate.
If you've already been up, you can't go again, by the way. We'll get your time there. I said, you can, right?
You said you can't go on.
Yeah, you can.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
In fact, please do. If you want to debate two different topics, even all six, by all means.
Could I just have you to please restate your topic so I don't misrepresent what you're saying?
Yeah, so we're talking about taxes and the tax brackets in the U.S. right now. And so right now we have a tax bracket which basically different people that make different incomes have to pay a different percentage in their taxes. And we are basically saying that we should flat tax everybody and have everybody pay the same in taxes rather than have the wealthier class pay more.
Okay, so our understanding, taxes pay for, no one really likes paying for taxes, but we pay taxes, and they pay for things every day, like the roads we use and everything like that. So if you have a higher income and you have even like say a business, you're going to have more people using more resources because of your business, more people driving on the roads, more people that need different health services and stuff like that. So higher incomes usually do lead to more of a need to pay higher taxes. If you just have a flat tax income, taxes don't really address what they need to be addressing, and then there would just be no use to taxes at all if you use the flat tax rate. And there's no economic, as far as I know, there's no developed country that uses a flat tax rate.
Well, while it is true that there are no other countries that use a flat tax rate, here in the U.S. we think that it would be a good idea to be able to do it, and we think that it would be a good option, simply because we are, excuse me, need to take a deep breath, getting a bit ahead of myself here, but basically for us in the U.S., we think that we should each have our own individual taxes, right? And we should be able to stay where we are.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Oh,
So I guess I'm just in the argument with, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll also say that, so the more income you make, the more money technically you're paying in taxes just at a flat tax rate because it's a percentage. That's all I really have.
Right, so when we say that there are different percentages, people that are making over $517,000 are being taxed at 37%. And what that's being used for is basically other people are taking this money, right? And they're using it for things that aren't needed. For, let's say, well, let's take a bridge up in New York, for instance. So us here, down here in South Georgia, we're not going to need to use a bridge up in upstate New York, which is something that Chuck Schumer passed in this infrastructure bill. And we're not going to need to use this bridge per se, but we're still having to pay for it. And we think that that's theft of your money, and we don't think that that's fair.
I'm not going to address the second part. The first part that was interesting, you said 30, okay, so like it's a common misrepresentation. You said 37% on that 500,000, but you know that 37% is after a certain threshold, right? It's not, you make $500,000 and then you're being taxed 37% of that $500,000. It's like past, I don't know the tax brackets in my memory, but it's like after that 400,000, that amount is being taxed at 37%. So it's not really as what you're making it seem it is. And my question is, do you, if a flat tax rate would be able to adequately address wealth distribution, then why is no other country using it? And you said it might be a good idea for this country to use it, but why? Why do you think it's a good idea? What evidence do we have that it's a better idea than the tax system that we're using?
Well, that's a good question, and we think that it's a good idea to use a flat tax system because taking more money from another individual versus somebody else that's making less money would be stealing from them what they're making. They're making more money, therefore they're being taxed more. That doesn't make sense. We believe that everybody should be taxed at the same rate.
I'm just going to end the argument that people with higher incomes use all of the things that our taxes pay for at a higher rate. So they should pay for taxes at a higher rate because they use more of the things that we're paying for in our taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to preface this by saying I'm not an debater. I'm just really just here to observe and see what's going on. But I just wanted to establish a bit of prior consistency in what you all said. So when the gentleman came up here and posed you a question about the cancer, and you said that stealing is wrong, right? Aren't taxes in any sort of form, according to your arguments, stealing? Because they're not voluntarily giving them up. And I would argue too, to add on to what you said about the cancer statement, right? That is kind of in a similar situation to what you're arguing for in this case, which is taking away something from some people. They might not like it, but you're helping people. So why is it that you're arguing in favor of a tax at all in this situation, but you're not supporting the prior statement of socialism with the cancer treatment at least? Just hypothetically.
So I'll open this one up for Grayson since he is socialism. All right. So we'll talk about, well, I figured since it is talking about socialism, however, when we say that we believe in this income tax bracket, right, we believe that people should have a flat tax, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We're in agreement on what you said.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so your question, repeat it one more time.
My question is, I just want a little bit of prior consistency in what you all were saying earlier, because you argue categorically, and I'm not sure exactly if it was you yourself who said that or if it was one of the panel, so that's my apologies, but I seem to remember it being argued that stealing categorically was wrong. And the question that was posed earlier was, and if my memory serves me, I may be wrong, but if someone has to cure cancer, and it could potentially save billions of lives by taking it away, you still refuse to take that cure because stealing is wrong. Was that what was said by the panel?
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue, in the case of cancer, right, you're taking away the cure. You're taking away the cure from that one person to benefit people. You're making one person lose out, potentially, so that other people can live better. But you refuse to do that, right? You refuse to do that in the cancer situation, correct?
Well, what we're for in this cancer situation is we're for this person not being able to possibly give this away if he doesn't choose to, correct? So, right. And so that's what we're arguing, the same thing in taxes. We're arguing that they should not be able to have this tax rate that's unfair and unequal and it's stealing.
But you're still advocating stealing because it's still a flat tax rate, correct?
Okay, I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, like I'm saying, if you were to remain consistent, you wouldn't be in favor of the tax at all because you would be taking from people who wouldn't like it, and you're redistributing it so that they would receive benefit. So I'm just looking for a bit of prior consistency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, no taxes is ideal, but it's not realistic, right? So it's not going to happen where everybody just, doesn't have any taxes. So what we are saying is that whoever wants to give in like a certain amount of money for, let's say, a bridge in upstate New York, those people that want to build that bridge in upstate New York should have to pay for it and not the folks that don't want to pay for it. So,
okay, I kind of see where you're at. I'm just trying to just establish a little bit of prior consistency in what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
To me, and I'm not very well read in this subject, but it sounds to me like you kind of just described a socialist structure.
We actually don't really think, so I do get what you're trying to say.
Right.
Preferably no taxes at all, right?
Well,
sometimes we gotta fund the police department, let's be honest. Sometimes we gotta fund the roads. We don't think that money literally has stuff that says taxation is theft. Because we believe that the people have, that is our time.
Sorry if I'm taking a lot.
Nah, you're good. We'll just wrap it up real quick.
yeah, we just believe that taxes should be localized. That's what we're saying. We're saying that taxes should be localized for the people that want to pay these taxes. And the people that don't want to pay these taxes shouldn't have to.
Okay, so there's my understanding of the situation is there's a line when it comes to money, but there's not a line when it comes to lives. That's all we need from this. Thank you.
Basically just localizing taxes. And the people know what's best to do with their own money.
she, her. So this kind of goes back to my last question a little bit. So my dad doesn't have an arm, and it just seems like the system that we already have kind of keeps, like, it's easier for people on top to stay on top, and it gets harder the further down you are to rise back up, because I know that personally my family struggled since my dad doesn't have an arm, and you said preferably no taxes at all. Even though that's unrealistic, what is your, like, in an ideal world, what do you think would be a worthy alternative? Like, where we think we could go with that instead?
In like some dystopian world, I suppose that socialism could work, but it's not going to work because we have people that are dead in their sin and people that are wanting to not do what is right, and they're not going to want to pay these taxes per se, and they're not going to pay these taxes if they don't choose to. And so what socialism is doing is it's taking away everybody's money and is redistributing it equally amongst the people. And we're saying that that's not really going to happen. We have people in this world that are going to come into power, and it's written in the Communist Manifesto that there needs to be somebody that is the moderator, right, that kind of distributes this wealth in some way. And this moderator is going to essentially get greedy and will eventually become the supreme ruler, dictator, whatever you want to call it, like in Venezuela or Cuba or North Korea and in those areas. Did I answer your question adequately?
Yeah, I think so, but with answering that question, I also have another follow-up question. In regards to socialism, you actually used a lot of extreme examples, but we really have not gone over countries that do have a more socialist kind of government, but are still doing pretty all right, like most Eastern European countries. Like Norway seems pretty all right, Finland. So you said that there's a moderator and they're going to get greedy. Why don't you think that that system will work here if it's working in Norway? And who is that moderator in Norway that you claim that is power hungry and has that grip on it like that?
Well, the problem with that is that they're not using real communism. They're not using the real communist theory or socialism for that matter. What they're using is socialistic healthcare and other socialistic things that really what they're doing is they're taxing people more in order to do this, right? They're taxing people at 25% in order to get this free healthcare. And that, in our opinion, at Turning Point, is what is theft.
Okay, yeah, tried socialism in some of these places, like actual socialism, and it did not work.
Where?
Sweden, I believe Sweden may be the only one, but they tried it and it didn't work. So while they still have these 25%, while they still have these 25% tax rates, they tried true socialism and it just did not work.
How so? In what way?
Anybody else got anything?
All right.
Sure, go to the socialist expert.
Thank you.
He just knows a little bit more. So I forgot to mention this. We are kind of more well taught on all of our topics, but what am I trying to say?
We divided up the topics between each of us, so when one of us is finished speaking, then the other one's going to pick up where we left off, kind of, is what we're trying to say.
So like Grayson's the socialist expert, John's the tax expert. In a little while I'll have Second Amendment and biological men and women's And Lindsay will have a portion and First Amendment. So that's just kind of how that works, in case you're wondering.
If we're all, if like they're all on board on the same page, and then the socialist expert, could you explain to me what he was talking about in terms of like what exactly went wrong in Sweden's situation where like socialism did not work for them?
Sweden and other Scandinavian countries are actually socialists. They just have generous welfare programs, and they're funded, like you said, by taxes on sales tax, like 25%. And if you want to do that, if that's what your country decides that they want to do, I mean, what am I going to say about it, right? But I wouldn't say per se that they have failed. I'm not an expert on Sweden or Norway or anything like that, but I would say that countries like Israel and the UK tried socialism after World War II and didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah. I guess then your argument is more of a moral one as to why we cannot move forward into more of an economy like that, less of a practical one. Because like I said, my dad has one arm, and he just like cannot get that arm, just because of our government, like the government we have now. Am I on the right track here that it's a moral thing, not a practical thing?
Yeah, but aren't you trying to make a moral argument saying that other people should pay for that too?
Well, I would say that like people at the top, they have two arms, and they're already in a place that is comfortable for them. And people at the bottom just do not have the resources when they get low enough to. Essentially, what I'm saying is, one second to guard my thoughts. It just seems like there's a ceiling. It seems like there's a ceiling from the bottom. It's just really hard to climb out of, which is why I just feel like we should favor more of the universal thing. And it's kind of just like y'all are wanting a place where it's like kind of fend for yourself more. But things just aren't always going to work. Like I understand that life's not fair, but some people are never going to be able to reach the same heights as other more capable people. So it's like, who do we look out for?
Right. Unfortunately, we've reached the end of our time. We're going to open it up to another person.
To answer that briefly, if you're in a socialist country, compared to in a capitalist country, there's a way to get out of the bottom. In a socialist country, when you're just, no matter how hard you work, you get the same amount of money, there's no way to go up because you're just constantly earning that same amount of money. And that's why the United States has more innovations, more small businesses are started in the United States and other capitalist countries. Yeah, go ahead.
It's just going back to what you first started talking about, which was a flat tax rate. My question on that is, I don't know exactly what rate you'd be looking at, but would that rate potentially cut back on the amount of government spending, the money that the government would be able to spend on altogether programs potentially by cutting down taxes? And is that something that you would be willing to address? Or would you be willing to just like adopt?
Well, the short answer to that question is yes, there would be some things that would need to be spent less on. And what we're saying is that there are other things out there that we can probably spend a little less money on. And that's what we are trying to get towards. And there are some things that, we do need. And there are other things that we need probably much less. And I don't think that, and we don't think it as a Turning Point community that that should happen.
Also, cut down on the wasteful government spending. Like, come on. And also, while we're on taxes, ancient Rome could build better roads than Scriven County. And y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. My county. To fix potholes, we just smack coal ash right on top of it. We don't ever repave it until about, I don't know, 2 weeks before an election. So, yeah, cut down on the wasteful government spending. Get it right the first time. That's just my 2 cents.
All right.
So I'm going to be discussing abortion today. I would first like to start off by saying, just like John, I am a Christian, but that is not the premise of why I believe that abortion is morally wrong. So to first define an abortion is a medical procedure that terminates a pregnancy by the perceived choice of a mother. It is an intentional act to terminate a human life at an early stage of development. As conservatives, we do not believe that the procedures of an abortion are morally correct, and we stand to defend the unborn, and with that, I will take questions.
You want me to walk over there?
I have a question. So I understand that you think it's morally wrong, but I have a question in regards to when the pregnancy threatens a mother's life. You see, there are states where they have trigger laws in place where it's virtually impossible to get abortions, even when the mother's life is at risk.
So I will first start off by saying that when a mom's life is at risk, typically the medical professionals will go in and cure whatever is going on with the mother, and that typically ends up in terminating the pregnancy, but that is not intentional.
So kind of like the saying with ectopic pregnancies, the intention is always to save the baby's life. However, that has not been successfully done yet. Can it be done one day? I'm absolutely sure it can be.
I would also like to add that there have been a few cases of women in states. One woman had a dead fetus in her for 2 weeks because she did not have access to an abortion.
That's not an abortion. Whatever.
That is an abortion.
It-
It's terminating.
Okay, the baby is already dead, unfortunately. It's sad. An abortion intentionally kills the child. Okay? That's basically.
An abortion is an intentional termination of a pregnancy. It's not an ectopic one. It's not a miscarriage. Do not get the two confused. They are by definition different.
The procedure to remove a miscarried fetus is similar to an abortion.
Not the same.
So similar. It's still, with the banning of abortions, it affects other things too. It starts with banning abortions, then it moves on to banning other procedures.
Such
Birth
as
control.
So why you say, so while you say that a miscarriage and an abortion are similar, they're not the same in this. You're ending somebody's life. You're terminating a heartbeat, which is scientifically proven that that is the start of a life. That is the big difference in between a miscarriage and an abortion.
But the bigger point I'm trying to make here is that I don't agree with the banning of abortion. I personally don't care for aborting children or babies or whatever. But also, I think that banning it is not necessarily a good idea. Because when you ban it, it starts out as a ban, but then it goes to banning other stuff. You can disagree with something morally without trying to blanket ban it. That's what I'm trying to say.
Which other stuff? What other stuff?
Oh, birth control, condoms. We have politicians who literally want to ban birth control and condoms.
So birth control and condoms are, they stop the fertilization from happening, and they don't
You're also kind of going down the slippery slope, like, none of us think we should ban birth control and condoms. I highly doubt there is enough politicians in any given state or federal government.
We are not against birth control or condoms.
Yeah.
We are against terminating an abortion.
But
a baby.
There's also not enough politicians in a given state or federal government to even pass that. So we're kind of going down this slippery slope of, well, if this happens, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, when really there's just no evidence that it will.
I'm not saying that you guys are against birth control or condoms. What I'm saying is that politicians are, some of these politicians are, and some of them, they believe, or they want to ban abortions, and then they want to ban other things on top of that. That's what I'm saying. I'm asking, well, now I guess I'll just ask, what do you think should be done about that one?
I do not think that birth control or
contraceptive
contraceptives should be banned.
I mean, you have politicians who do want to expand beyond banning abortions.
That's not our stance here at Turning Point USA, and we recognize that there may be some people out there that may be what they want to do, but they're going down the slippery slope as well if they're using that argument.
I'm saying, how would we address that problem? How would it be addressed in that instance? Because while you guys might be against abortion, there are many people who are also against abortion who want to go beyond that.
Well, last question and we're done.
I'd say just what I'm saying to you right now. Tell them it's a slippery slope. Tell them that, yes, abortion is wrong. However, abortion is terminating the life inside of the fetus, right? And they're going down the slippery slope when they're saying, oh, well, we want to now ban contraceptives or something like that. So just tell them that they're going down the slippery slope fallacy as well.
Well,
and with that, we're out of time. We appreciate it. Thank you.
We do appreciate you coming.
Lacey, they, them. This is going to be a really brief one. I kind of just want to get our perspective on this. So I actually have a friend who has had about 6 abortions. So it's kind of like a haunted house in there. And I was wondering, would it be worth it to instead lower the price or even make condoms and contraceptives free so that these abortions don't have to happen while they're still legal? Like, we don't have to put the resources in to have these abortions happen, and instead we educate people on safe sex and make condoms cheaper and more accessible?
Condoms are $5 at CVS right now. If you can't afford those, you should not be having sex in the first place.
Fair.
Average cost to raise a child is $250,000, and I don't know, that was another one mic drop.
And you can also get free condoms from DPH, Department of Public Health.
And Planned Parenthood provides birth control for free and condoms for free, just so you know.
I won't even mention our own university healthcare pharmacy.
Okay. So my question is, when you make your argument for why abortion is immoral, you laid out a few things. You said fetus is a human being. It's a lie. I agree with those, right? When you abort it, you're killing it. I agree with that. But there's an underlying principle that you're affirming there, which is that what gives us more consideration, right? What makes us morally valuable is the fact that we're human. Now, for somebody like me who's a vegan, I'm not going to hold that principle. I'm going to hold some principle like it's sentient beings that are valuable, right? And so if a fetus is...
What do you mean by sentient?
Yeah, so I mean like a subjective experience, right? The ability to be like something, right? So like with a rock, there's no sense of what it's like to be a rock. But for something like a cow, something like a human, there's the sense of what it's like to be a human, the subjective experience. That's what I'm referring to when I say sentient. So I'm asking what the justification is for the principle that it's being human that's valuable rather than something like it's being sentient that's valuable.
Are you referring to a rock?
When I say sentient, no, I'm saying subjective experience.
Well, where do you draw the line for when a life is sentient? Where do you draw the line for that? Do you draw it at,
Yes. So it's gonna, are you asking like what it means to become sentient, or are you asking at what point in pregnancy do I think that they're sentient?
Basically, when a life becomes a life, yes.
Yes.
Well, it's a life, like it's a cellular life from the time that it starts development at conception. I'm with you there. I don't disagree with you on the descriptive facts, right? That's not where my disagreement is. It's with the moral principle that's what makes it valuable. That's what I'm asking for justification for.
Your question is confusing me. Can you repeat?
I was not, and my grandma easily could have aborted me. You know, and she didn't do that. She was willing to give birth to me, put me up for adoption. I was adopted by a nice family in Atlanta, and I'm 18 years old, going to Georgia Southern University. So I don't think there's a point in time from conception to now that my life was never valuable. And that's what we're trying to say here. So life is always valuable, no matter whether it's conception or right now at 18.
Right. I mean, that's a reassertion of the claim. It's not a justification. But maybe I can rephrase my question. So when you lay out your argument, you say abortion is wrong, and it's wrong because the fetus is human, it's alive, and you're killing it. That's why abortion is wrong. And what I'm saying is if I say, well, yeah, fetus, I'm saying, why is it the fact that it's human, right? Why isn't it that abortion is wrong once it's sentient? Because it is alive, it is sentient, and you're killing it, right? Why would we draw this line at human and kind of exclude all these other sentient beings?
Do you mean just living beings in general?
No. So I'm saying that when you say that abortion is wrong because the fetus is human, why should we grant that it's just a moral claim that like being human is what makes you valuable? It's always wrong to kill humans. Is the claim that I'm challenging.
Yes, it is always wrong to kill a human.
Right, that's what I'm asking for justification for.
Because it's wrong to murder a human being.
Do you know what circular reasoning is?
May I add something?
Yeah.
Thou shalt not murder. It doesn't say thou shalt not kill a beast. It says we are to be above the beasts. We are above the beasts.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not kill, meaning thou shalt not kill a human being.
Yeah, so that's a reassertion of the moral claim. That's not like, what's the argument for that claim? That it's being human that makes it wrong for you to kill you instead of something like being sentient is what makes it wrong for you to kill you.
I guess it's up to you morally, but again, that's what murderers like.
It just sounds like there's not an argument for the claim.
Are you saying there's not an argument to not kill someone?
Do you want me to come back up? Okay.
I guess what we said. Exactly what we said.
You don't want to come back up, I will.
Please.
Would everybody in here agree that if a mass shooter walked in here and started killing people, it would be wrong?
Yes.
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 I don't think that's what he's saying.
Well,
That's what it sounds like you're saying when you
I'll clarify what I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Are you done?
I got a question for the table here. What makes me a valuable person? Is it how much money I have?
No.
What is it?
Psalm 139:14.
Yeah.
All I want to do is clarify because I think I might have been misunderstood.
We're gonna move on, okay? Like, with all due respect, we're gonna move on. If we have time at the end, we'll try to get you in at the end, but we're gonna move on, okay? Thank you, though.
So to answer your question, Psalm 139:14 says, "For I am fearfully and wonderfully made." That's what makes you in your life valuable. In the eyes of the Lord, your life is valuable.
So,
I'm of the belief that I think a lot of y'all are Christian, and I'm of the same boat. I'm Christian. I try to base my political views around my faith. And since of abortion, as I believe from a Christian point of view, that it is very wrong. And if it was up to me, I think abortion would be illegal everywhere. But I do recognize, because there's the two labels where it says pro-choice and pro-life. And where I struggle with is that those who say they're pro-life and those who put policies in place to prevent abortion, I feel like do not back the label being truly pro-life and just being pro-birth. What are some policies or some things that would be really helpful for those? Because if you say you're outlawing abortion but don't add other things to help out people when they have decided not to terminate a pregnancy, what are some things that would be truly pro-life in a sense when you're restricting abortion?
So we have several organizations, both local and national. One that comes to mind is Let Them Live. They raise money for expectant mothers that are struggling to make ends meet, are in a difficult situation, that any situation that they want to have this child, but they don't feel, what is the word I'm trying to, they feel like they're being forced to make the choice to abort. And also, here locally, there are pro-life pregnancy centers. I believe there's also about 3 times the amount of women's centers or pregnancy centers that have pro-life stances, don't make recommendations for abortions, period. But they give out clothes, diapers, stuff like that. Triple the amount nationwide. There's one right here in Statesboro. I believe it's called Choices of the Heart. There is one in Rankin. There's probably, I won't guess where another one is, but I do know of those two. Anything there? That was a little bit of a rant. Did that answer a little bit?
Yes, that absolutely did. I would also like to address in terms of healthcare, in terms of going to the hospital, because on average, the cost to having a child is about $10,000. So if you're taking away abortion from people that may be low income and may not be able to afford being able to have an abortion or raising a child, how then would you address this other obstacle of having a $10,000 charge for having a child? Like, what would just be something like that y'all would think would be good for this?
I think it kind of just goes back to what I just said. I kind of hate to give you the runaround. But honestly, I think what I was just saying might be the best option. And of course, how are these things funded? Voluntarily.
Yeah, we'll keep it open to Lindsay more. She's the expert.
Women should be able to go to these centers to provide care and help for the women. But that's pretty much all I have to say about that. As far as the cost and things like that go.
I appreciate y'all for raising
Okay, hi, I'm sorry. I want to preface by saying I'm also not a debater. I'm a religious heritage observer, and I am very anxious for people, so I was sorry if I speak fast, just so I don't get that way. I just have a question when it comes to being pro-life. Personally, I'm very pro-choice myself. But when you're outlawing abortion, you're not getting rid of abortion, you're just getting rid of safe abortions because if a woman does not want to have a child, she's not going to. So considering yourself pro-life, how do you account for the lives being lost when you have women who go to other lengths to not have this child because you're not allowing them to have safe abortions? They're doing it at home. They're, in some cases, women have killed themselves to not have these children. How are you accounting for those lives being lost?
So When it comes to illegal abortions or just at-home abortions, if you make an abortion illegal, there's obviously going to be more of an instance of illegal abortions happening. But I'm pro-life, so I'm for just the minimization of as many abortions as possible. So in the instance of things like Roe v. Wade being overturned, which actually it's a very big misconception that it made it outlawed entirely, but it just took it from a federal level to a state level. It actually reduced the amount of abortions by 10,000. So I would just say that's why I'm pro-life.
I'd also like to say that technically, when we're thinking about something, I mean, what's a safe abortion? When only the baby's life is lost?
Hello, Darius Egan.
Hi, Darius.
Hey, so we already talked about in a case of a woman's life, mother's life is at risk. But what are your views on in a case of a rape or incest? Should an abortion be allowed in that case?
So I'd first like to add that rape and incest is an overwhelmingly minority of abortion cases. So if you're ready to stipulate that all the other abortion cases are morally incorrect and just incorrect in general and should be outlawed, then we can talk about the case of rape and incest. Are you willing to say that all the other abortions are wrong, or is that just like an excuse?
I'm sorry, I thought there were a second. Can you repeat that?
I'm saying the overwhelmingly minority of abortion cases that involve rape and incest is way less than 1%. So if you're willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are morally incorrect and should be outlawed, then we can talk about the rape and incest cases. But or is that just like, are you using rape and incest as an excuse to make the minority to justify the overwhelming majority of all abortion cases?
I'm just asking, should a person who has been raped or has been or has a pregnancy due to incest, should they be allowed to have an abortion? I'm not asking about any other case.
So no, I do not think that they should be able to have an abortion. I think that the rapist should be incarcerated or killed.
Secondly, okay, let me think about how to rephrase
And I'm saying that because a baby, a fetus, is a unique human being with 23 chromosomes from the father and 23 chromosomes from the father and 23 from the mother, 46 idiosyncratic chromosomes. It's a different human being. The baby should not be penalized because of somebody else's actions, just as though you should not be penalized if somebody comes and shoots everyone in here. Same thing.
So I think something that we always forget about when we talk about abortion or just pregnancy in general is pregnancy. The 9 months that someone has to go through in order to have a child. When someone's not able to have an abortion, or when you ban an abortion, and you do not want to have a child, you are effectively forcing them to go through 9 months of pregnancy, which they did not want to do. That's essentially, what's a good analogy for that? That's like forcing you to have there's not a good analogy for that.
Well, then you should not have sex.
Abstinence is not a proven form of sex.
And that's something that is culturally wrong in the society, and I think it does need to be addressed. But if you are not prepared to carry a child for 9 months, then you should not have sex.
And that's how 99.9%.
We're all acting like the consequence of having sex is like that you're not going to get pregnant. When you have sex, consensual sex, you know that you're getting into a situation where there's a possibility of you getting pregnant.
Consent to sex is consent to sex, not consent to having a child or the possibility of having a child.
You are making that assumption when you have sex. You are
We're making an assumption
acknowledging.
when we when you have sex, you have sex. There's
You
no-
are acknowledging that you are partaking in an activity that could potentially lead you to getting pregnant. That does not give you the right to kill the baby. Does that make sense?
Yes. I had another question earlier, but I kind of forgot it because I had those other ones pop up.
Alright, so I'm back here for a little bit of prior consistency, right? So I'm back here for a little bit of prior consistency as far as your argument is concerned. So I've got a few points. The first one is, you said that you didn't have an argument grounded in faith as for why abortion was wrong. Have you presented that yet?
I've presented biological standards as to why an abortion is wrong.
Biological standards, and you've provided your argument.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Let's establish that. Then my question afterwards is, why is it immoral to terminate the life of a child, right? And I believe it is a very hard decision to make. I'm not saying just go willy-nilly and kill babies and stop life from happening. I just see people right. Why is it immoral to terminate the life of a child, but it's not immoral to save millions of people from cancer?
Cancer and murder are two completely different things.
We're managing two different things.
Yeah, you can't.
That gets a bit. You all have held that you would not save millions of lives because that would be stealing from one person, right? So doesn't
So why do you have the right to steal the baby's life just because it's
I'm
convenient?
arguing for abortion. I'm arguing against what you all have claimed, which is that it's okay not to steal from that person if millions of people are going to die. If you believe that abortion is wrong because it is stopping life from happening, that's the moral reason, right?
Yes, because abortion kills 2 million babies a year.
Well, I don't know where you got that
Give or
figure from.
take.
I don't know where you got that figure from, but
It's give or take.
Okay.
But let's just say 2 million.
so let's also say how many people die from cancer a year? I don't know. Would you be willing to? I'm just trying to get a little bit of consistency because you're saying, hey, we can't save 2 million lives a year because I can't steal from one person who's being extremely greedy, which is already a sin, right? Would you not say that they're being greedy if they're trying to keep money for themselves? I mean, I'm just trying to get a little consistency here, which is we can't save lives by changing our communities, but we can save lives by changing our personal decisions. I'm just trying to get a little bit of, just to make sure that I'm understanding your viewpoint here. It's not okay to terminate a fetus. It's not okay to terminate a fetus. But it's okay to terminate those millions of lives with cancer because someone doesn't want to be cured.
Well, can I just point out the straw man fallacy right here?
Yeah, sure, please.
You're pointing out something that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about abortion.
Right.
However, cancer is different.
Okay, but let me boil this down to that, right? Cancer ends lives, correct?
Sorry?
Cancer ends lives, correct?
Yes.
Abortion ends lives.
Yes.
So why can't we not stop cancer? Why can't we not stop cancer?
Because cancer is not man-caused.
But wouldn't you say in a way then that you're stealing away someone's personal liberty if you force abortion on them too? Why is that okay to steal from them? Why is it okay?
Because it's a separate life with different DNA.
But it's okay. Sorry.
It's a fetus is a separate life with different DNA than the mother.
And the mother is a different life than yours, which may not have the same beliefs as you.
Are
That's
you
why
talking
I
about
believe.
religious beliefs?
Yes.
I'm not talking about religious beliefs right now.
Well-
I'm talking about biology.
Okay. That's fine, but I'm still trying to get consistency in what was being said earlier, which was
This cure for cancer doesn't even technically.
We haven't even found a cure for cancer yet. Yeah, exactly.
For
So
debate's
it's
sake, this is a hypothetical, right? And we're not talking about one particular
We were just
situation.
talking about this cancer thing like 30 minutes ago, and it was a hypothetical.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just here for consistency. I just don't understand why in one case it's okay to have a life live, to make an active decision to let a life live.
But in another case, it's not.
Last question and we're done because we are actually at 5
Okay,
minutes.
that's fine.
And no disrespect to you, but we did go to 5 minutes. And I just want to keep it at 5 minutes. Thank you.
So I just want to understand your rationale behind when you say that the fetus's life begins at heartbeat, that that's when you think they're alive, correct?
When did I say that the fetus?
No, I'm asking.
I believe that the fetus's life begins at conception.
Okay, could they exist outside of the woman's body at that point though? It's not a human if it can't exist independently, correct?
So, can they, 2 months, so baby that's been outside of the womb at 2 months is 2 months old, right?
Yes.
Can they survive on their own?
If they were in a desirable environment.
So, there's,
So, yeah. So if I get pregnant and I'm a preemie and it's in a NICU, does that give me the right to stab it in the heart?
That's
Because
not what I said.
because it's supported by the NICU nurses and everybody that's taking care of it?
Those two things don't compare.
Yes, they do. Because I could still be pregnant with a preemie. It's just I gave birth to it early, so.
Well, that's on the premise.
It can't live on its own. It has to be supported by something else. It's the same as the mother and the.
I'm not trying to deny that. I'm saying that most women don't. The percentage of women who try to get an abortion in the third trimester when babies are put in the NICU, that's an insignificant amount, percentage. Do you understand what I'm saying, or should I?
No, can you rephrase that real quick?
That you're saying that, oh, baby in the NICU, that's, normally they're put in the NICU during the third trimester if they're born, right?
Yes.
So you're comparing those two, so you're basically comparing a baby that's aborted in the third trimester, but that hardly ever happens.
And it doesn't hardly ever happen, actually. It's about 30% of abortions that are being performed today.
I guess.
Which is a pretty significant number if you look at the amount of abortions that are being performed in total a year. So that is actually a pretty significant number.
I guess people look at different statistics then, because I haven't seen anything that says that, but that's all I have to say.
Well, Media Research Center provides the statistics. The Intercept provides the statistics. I can give you a longer list if you'd like to meet me sometime later.
I'm going to say this. What am I trying to say? I'm sorry. The most premature baby that has ever survived, I believe, was born at about 21 weeks gestation. I have a cousin that was born at 23 weeks. Yet, we're throwing out these, we're saying in some states that we can terminate this pregnancy right up to the moment of birth. Guys, the baby feels pain at 15 weeks gestation. Forget conception for just a moment. It feels pain at 15 weeks. When an abortion is being done, it fully knows what's happening.
My name is Jordan, and in America, a place of liberty, freedom, and justice. First time, I'm kind of nervous about that.
No, it's okay. You're good. Hey, just take a deep breath. It's okay.
This is our first time too.
In America, a place where liberty, freedom, and justice is there. And life and death is fundamentally a part of every aspect of life. Life and death is a part of that. And sex is even a part of life from the beginning, even historically mentioned in the Bible, or just as you go on any college campus, sex is all a part of that. And I feel like where America, where we fall short at, is the education of sex. And we don't really take the time to really educate people about sex, but we're here to tell you, hey, you can't have an abortion, or you have to have this child. And it is for us to give people help and other government services to assist these people now is like putting a Band-Aid over the real issue. And the real issue falls on education and letting people, and not letting people, giving people an understanding of sex, the conception of it, the risk of it, the diseases of it, the whole aspect. I'm pretty sure a lot of people in here can think about the time that they were in sex ed in high school, can barely remember anything they were talking about. And a lot of people have still fell victim of that lack of knowledge. So I would say I'm more pro-choice. I feel like people should have their own decision because sometimes you're putting people in a position to have children and they're not economically stable. And yes, it is their fault. It's their decision. But as them being citizens and them being in a place where education is the thing for everybody, we should put more time or energy into education to get them, be able to give these people an understanding of what they're doing and the repercussions of that instead of just putting a Band-Aid over the actual issue.
Yes, I agree that sex education should be more taught in, schools, yes. But is that what you're asking, if sex education should be taught? Because it just sounded like you were saying that sex education isn't taught good enough.
I don't feel like it is. I feel like we waste more money on other things like the Band-Aids of it, which is like the government agencies helping these mothers and these other agencies. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing, no, but these
Yeah, we give a lot of money to these organizations like Planned Parenthood to terminate the life of a human being, so that's also one organization.
Okay.
We're gonna finish up with you and then we're gonna move on to the next topic, just to make sure we get everything in. We're gonna move on to the next topic, just to make sure we get everything in, right?
So,
It's already set.
well, at the end, we'll try and get as many people as we can to ask as many other questions. So
Yeah.
I'm also First Amendment. Just to start off by saying, this First Amendment in the Constitution states that Congress should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So my stance on freedom of speech should be that in the case of social media platforms and big tech companies, there has been a lot of censorship on the conservative end, and I believe that should be stopped immediately because there have been instances where social media platforms have been censored and locked, and people have been locked out of their accounts where these stories and allegations have been proven true months later, and the other side seems to lack censorship in the same way that the conservatives have. So, with that, I'll take questions.
Okay, so I can see where you're coming from if social media platforms were owned by government agencies. They wouldn't be allowed to infringe on our freedom of speech rights if they were giving us this platform to speak. But these are private people who own these social media platforms. They're business owners. So isn't it kind of like an encroachment on business rights to say, hey, you can't say that you don't want this type of content in your business, you don't want this type of people posting on your platform, because that's really what it is. If Twitter has a policy and they have these policy agreements and you infringe on those policy rights, that business owner, the person over Twitter, the laws or the rules surrounding Twitter have the right to remove you. The solution is to just go find another business. That's free market right there.
Not when the DHS is working directly with Twitter on their disinformation policy. That actually happened.
If Twitter wanted to figure out, the owner of Twitter wanted to deal with less disinformation in their platform, and they wanted to use the Department of Homeland Security statistics for that, there's nothing they can still against that. I don't see, so what would be your solution really to tell these social media platforms, how to regulate their business? It's like an encroachment on the rights that most of the conservative party is always saying, they're always talking about these business rights, and if you don't like it, go somewhere else. That's pretty much the same thing with Twitter and Facebook. Just go find some other platform.
So I would like to say that when
it's not freedom of speech. Sorry, that's all I want to say. It's not freedom of speech. It's not constitutional denial. That's it.
When it comes to truth, it should not be censored in any way, shape, or form. When it comes to truth, and I can give you about 10 examples of truth that has been said on the conservative platform and has been censored platforms, and I can tell you that it has affected the 2020 election in a great way. And that has been proven by many polls, and I can give you examples right now if you'd like.
Who were those things taken down by?
Twitter.
So basically the person owns.
The fact checkers that are actually just opinion checkers. No, that are opinion checkers. They do not like the narrative that is being spouted out, so they.
But Twitter is allowing these opinion checkers to work for them. It's their right as a business owner. Like if I make a social media platform, I can make these different policies. I can say you're not allowed to talk about this, or that, and that would just be that. I can use whatever system I want to account for that.
Okay, so also I'd like to add that Mark Zuckerberg claimed that Twitter and Facebook were going to stand with the continuation of freedom of speech. So why are they censoring people? Before they started censoring people, they claimed that they would stand with the freedom of speech. The owner of these companies stand for freedom of expression. They, talk about how they, stand with the First Amendment. They have said that, end quote. But they censor these public platforms that, seem to give out the truth. Why is that? Why do they lie? Because of freedom of speech.
I think it's a different answer to try to answer why did this business person suddenly decide to have different practices. But it's another thing to say that should be illegal.
We also must not remember, sorry, I'm about to say this. We also must not remember the New York Post story about the laptop from hell.
Yeah, so.
What about it?
So when it comes to censorship just in general, I would like to say that the former White House press secretary, which is a top government, she is an official, Kayleigh McEnany, along with many other conservative spokespersons, have been locked and censored from their accounts, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you name it. And I would like to also say that law enforcement today reported that 82% of Biden voters were uninformed on at least one of these key stories, and that 17% of Biden voters would not have voted for Biden if they had known about the horrendous scandal that was proven true 10 months later about Hunter Biden's laptop. And that is a fact.
So I'm going to leave Hunter Biden's laptop alone. But
what about the Russian bounties? What about that? We were censored for that. So do you know what that is?
Okay. American.
What about Donald Trump? What about Donald Trump? What about them going with the narrative that said Donald Trump did a blockade at a chapel to get a photo op, and they ran with that story, but it was a complete lie. And
what was the lie?
That Donald Trump had blocked protesters from protesting at a chapel and for a photo op. That was the lie by the New York Post.
Right, he had blocked protesters. He just had officers shoot them with rubber.
That is not true. That has been proven false. That has been proven false.
No, that is not
5 minutes.
That has been proven false by the New York Post and by the Federalist, by the Intercept. I can go off the list.
Okay, so I just like to end this argument by saying that you really didn't address my answer. Like, my whole question was, how is it not government encroachment to tell these private business owners that they can't practice this? And you couldn't answer that. You went to every other non-argument. Thank you.
Okay, hi. So I noticed we're talking about like free speech a lot, and I just started a legal environment, a business class, and if you really study the laws, you can see that speech is not all speech is 100% protected.
Mm-hmm.
Like
such as defamation and
like libel. So like if you write like
it's defamation and threats. It's not any. It's
and libel. It's called trade libel, or just libel is like written defamation. And so if you spread like false information or lies, like you're not protected from that. So they have a right to like take that down.
So I can give you examples of false allegations against Donald Trump, that were not taken down.
And I think that's wrong too. I'm not on either side. I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I don't really have a party, honestly. I agree with both sides. I disagree with both sides. But I just think as far as this argument, as far as like platforms and social medias, if you were to go outside with your posters and stuff right now, okay, you can do that. But private platforms, like that's like going to Walmart and holding that up. It's a company, it's a business. You can't just put whatever you want out there. It's not your property. It's not public property. It's private property.
Are you talking about when Twitter like censors things?
Yes.
So it
Private company in the United States, they still have to follow the law of freedom of speech.
Yes, but not all speech is protected.
What do you mean?
Like I said, like libel, written, false information, it's not protected. You can still.
But on
So-
platforms like Twitter, it's all taken because it's not actual fact checkers.
And an example of that would be the Hunter Biden story that the fact checkers took down and censored accounts for, and then it was proven true. All those allegations.
Well, you say it's censored, but then how do you know that it's true? You know that it's true because you found out, so it wasn't really censored.
It wasn't. We're talking about Twitter and Facebook. We're not talking about other platforms
Okay,
like New York Post and The Intercept that prove this to be true, and the New York and Politico. So those were
well,
the
that, I'm
platforms.
sure that happens a lot on platforms, though. That's not the first time that's happened.
Yeah, but
So
it's the
to
first.
say that there's
Yes, it is not the first time that's happened, but it is the first time that's affected an election to this extent. So that is a fact.
And affected the election also.
Because the Federalists said that did a poll and 17% of Biden voters would not have voted for Biden if they had known about the Hunter Biden scandal, and there was no way of these social media of these citizens to know that scandal because it was being censored on these public platforms.
Okay. Well, if they really wanted to know, they would have found out, right? Everybody, well, I don't think everybody who votes actually looks into their parties and what they really stand for. But if you really wanted to know who you're voting for, you would have looked into that. Sometimes they don't care about somebody's laptop.
Problem is, it wasn't on any type of platform. It was demonetized everywhere. That was the problem. Nobody would even speak about it. So that's the issue that we have with that, is that it was being demonetized on Twitter. The laptop from hell was being demonetized from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, pretty much all the mainstream media. And we think that, and it's actually scientifically proven that this is what caused a large election swing in 2020.
I'll just clarify exactly what a laptop from hell is from the best that I can remember. Just clarify for them, because.
So what that laptop entailed was emails that include how Hunter Biden was planning to utilize his family name as leverage connections to land lucrative deals with Ukraine. So leverage in the government is something that all government officials try to avoid because it's a very bad, and it is a slippery slope that you do not want to be involved in when it comes to dealing with government officials and foreign policy.
So Trump didn't do that when he took those files from
Russia? Is that what you're about to say?
Muscle mass, more strength. They have a larger lung diaphragm, which causes faster oxygen delivery throughout the body. And before we start, I do want to put out there one thing. You can change your physical body however you want. You can't change genetics. You cannot change the difference between a man and a woman genetically is a woman has 2 X chromosomes and a man has an X and a Y chromosome. You can't change that Y chromosome to an X chromosome and vice versa. And I'm taking questions.
So I know that this is a very controversial and sensitive subject, and I'm unsure which way to fully lean on, because I recognize the potential of having transgender women, transgender men playing against biological women. I've seen some of the stuff where you have these people in boxing, where you have like these injuries come up. I've seen other sports where you have some competitive advantages with these people. What I also know from sports is that it provides good mental stability. As someone that has some mental issues with himself, and also as a former athlete, I found that doing sports, specifically cross country and baseball, provided me a lot of mental relief. And to think about someone that may have made that difficult decision to transition to the opposite gender, they may be dealing with some mental issues. So my question, though, is if we're talking about banning biological men from competing in women's sports, what would be some alternatives to address some of the mental things that these women may, or these men may be dealing with in this issue by taking away sports, which could be something that's almost like a lifeline toward them with mental stability?
Right. So, to start off with, they're already in this identity crisis, and right now you have a lot of social media chatter, what that may be. Well, you might be another gender. And they transition, they go through surgery, which, by the way, is a permanent mutilation of your body. So there's where some of the mental health concerns come from. As far as alternatives in competing with sports, the best way I would say is having their own category, kind of like how the Boston Marathon does it. They have their own transgender category. I'm trying to think of one other thing I was going to say that has to do with that. But basically, yeah. Have their own transgender category. I just think that, and I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't compete in sports, that's my alternative idea. I'm just saying that those with a competitive advantage shouldn't be competing. And yeah, and I was really, mainly what we were talking about is like track and swimming and maybe volleyball. Boxing, that's a physical sport where the biological limit is almost no match in terms of strength and physical build.
I would say that having a separate transgender category is extremely outing, and I feel like that would do more harm than good because a lot of these people want to be relatively secretive about what they're doing. And I feel that, well, I understand the position where they come from. I feel like that could do more harm than good.
Then don't play sports.
So, should we ban Michael Phelps from swimming? This is related. This is related.
Say that again.
Should we ban Michael Phelps from swimming?
No.
Okay, because I'm asking because he is a genetic weirdo. He is literally a freak. He does not create.
Okay, let's not attack people like that.
I mean it in the best way possible. He's a weirdo like I'm a weirdo, but still, he does not produce lactic acid like we do. He just has a weirdly large wingspan for his height. He's just like, I wouldn't say genetic freak again, but like he's like just like he is literally built for swimming.
So
And
if he wanted to transition into a woman, would that make it equal? Would that make it fair for the other women in sports to just go against that genetic freak just because he wanted to transition?
What I'm saying is that it's unfair to.
No, it is unfair. You're exactly right. It is unfair to these women that have to deal with a biological man competing in the same positions that they are.
There's not too many cases that I know of where.
There's enough cases to where it makes a huge margin for these women to not be able to compete in the same realm that these biological men are. So,
Well, let's take an example of the Olympics, right? The Olympics has allowed transgender people to qualify to contend for, I don't want to say around like 10 or so years. But so far, only like, I'm guessing, I do not know the actual numbers.
There is a transgender male that won a women's weightlifting competition.
She did not win. She got 8th or 13th.
No, she got gold.
She did not win. But she did not win that. I know she is like a record holder, but she did not win that competition, which is what I was going to bring up. Like, there's no proof, but like at least like once someone has gone through sufficient therapy, that because I'm not sure if you know this or not, but hormone replacement therapy really changes your body, like extremely changes your body.
Does it change the X and Y chromosomes?
Oh my God, no.
Exactly, so then that's in the discussion.
Wow.
And yes, times are only 6% slower.
So intersex people should not be able to compete in sports?
What?
So it does change their body. You're right, it changes their body, not genetics. So yes, Thomas's swim times are 6% slower than pre-transition. Guess what? The average biological female swimmer is still 8 to 10% slower than males on average.
What I'm saying is, I don't think there's a significant enough evidence, or at least transgender people have not been in sports long enough to where we have a large enough, what's the word?
We're seeing exactly what's going on, just with like the Leah Thomas case. There's another case in North Carolina where they're refusing to play against a particular high school volleyball team because a biological male spiked the ball directly in the face of a biological female player. So there's your unfair advantage. Yeah.
Injuries happen all the time in sports.
Okay, but bone density is greater in males than in females, and the skull protects you from concussions. This girl still has a concussion-like symptoms, and we're about 5 or 6 weeks post-incident. That is very significant. And if you want to talk about what Connor was talking about earlier with like boxing, no chance.
So basically, my question is, or let me just preface this with all international sporting agencies, what they use to determine what gives people an unfair advantage across all international sporting politics is testosterone testing. They don't test for muscle mass, bone density, all these other things we talked about. They test for testosterone levels. So if a transgender woman has the threshold for what they deem is the biggest determinant for unfair advantage, which is testosterone levels, if they meet that threshold, what makes it wrong?
So first of all, just because they're not doing it doesn't mean they should be doing it. Second of all, and I don't have this exact study in my notes, but it came to mind. There is a study out there where they tested the testosterone levels in a few different athletes right before they started therapy, and then 2 years down the road, they still had a distinct competitive advantage over biological females.
This would be one study, but this isn't the consensus of researchers. Like the overall consensus, like the body of education, they agree that these people that have these testosterone levels that are lower, that it does reduce their advantage, and that they don't always win the competitions, and that is just as much competition.
I may be only talking about one study, but that doesn't mean there's probably not other studies out there, and eventually we're going to get to where there's, and if there's not another study out there, we're going to get to a point where there are more studies out there. And I think just from what I've been saying in common sense, that we're just going to keep repeating the scientific method and keep getting the same result with under similar testing circumstances.
Okay, so you don't have a claim basically for why it's wrong?
Because it's competitively unfair, that's why it's wrong.
But if the sporting agencies say it doesn't, it makes them not
The sport,
competitive.
just because the sporting agency
The
says
sporting
it
agencies
doesn't
basing their
mean-
research off of the consensus of researchers, like their conclusion comes from the consensus of researchers. They started off with physical examinations, and then when people were still, like in women's sports, and when people were still complaining about, oh, she has, I'm gonna be blunt, she has the genitals of a female, but she still seems stronger and faster, so then they tried to resort to chromosome testing. And then when they tried to resort to chromosome testing, they found out that there's even variations within people's chromosomes that might make them more feminine or masculine. And then they found out chromosome testing wasn't reliable, they moved on to testosterone. So I'm not even arguing testosterone is the best thing for sporting agencies, but like if you were to do muscle mass, bone density and stuff, you would have a whole bunch of little dispersed groups in sports. It really wouldn't make any sense. But what I do know is that the research they use and what they say is the sole determinant of comparative advantage is testosterone. And these people who have lower testosterone levels are on the same playing field, they're on the same level, according to research of most scientists, not just like 1 or 2 studies. Thank you.
I just respectfully disagree, but that's okay.
All right. I just want to preface by saying, to me personally, I'm assuming you'll probably disagree here, but Leah Thomas is like my LeBron, in all honesty. I just think she'll go down as one of the most solid athletes we've ever seen.
And the ranking 4 to 500 to the mid 4 and 500s in the male NCAA swimming, then transitioning and become one of the top in the nation. Yeah, I'd say she'd probably go down additionally.
She's just athletic, honestly. Like, she's just built different.
Yes,
But
genetically she's a male.
she knows how to swim. She's pretty good though. But essentially, what I'm trying to get at is, as a gender fluid male, female, I haven't really decided yet. I know I've been beaten up by girls a lot, every day for summer. One time, this girl across the street, she used to beat on me a good bit. So essentially what I'm saying is, if these athletes have an advantage and should not be in the league, then where should they be instead? Because she said they can't play sports because they have this
As of
advantage.
now, then they should not if they're not going to come if they're going to compete in the opposite sex.
Is that not like excluding people based on their
I did
affiliation?
get the one alternative earlier.
Yeah,
It's basically the same question.
Until there is a separate section for these transgender or gender fluid people to compete in, and they should either compete in the category that they were assigned their sex, their genetic chromosomes, because it has been proven that they have a biological advantage, competitive advantage over these female athletes, or they should just not compete in general.
All right. I guess a follow-up question is, we seem really negative towards Leah Thomas. His comments were obviously sarcastic. Do we really not acknowledge that even in the league you claim she should be in, that she's not an accomplished athlete? Like, do
She
we...
might be accomplished on paper, of course.
I will say that Leah Thomas was one of the least ranked in men's, but the number 1 in women. So how is that possible? If genetic makeup doesn't matter when it comes to competing in sports, how is she one of the least ranked men's swimmers, but the highest ranked women's swimmer?
The highest ranked women's swimmer? I'm not sure.
Because she has a competitive biological advantage over the women.
Maybe she trains a lot.
We're going to move on to a Second Amendment because it's 7:49 and I said we'd be out of here by 8 o'clock. And we're also going to cut it down to 3 minutes a person, just to try to get in 1 or 2 more people. Okay, so, Second Amendment says, right out the Constitution, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. As conservatives, we view this both as a right to bear arms to protect against tyrannical governments and the right to bear arms for self-protection. So that's basically it. Any questions?
It's more of related to Second Amendment. And because one of the things that we look at the news with, well, like, let me try this again. We look at the news whenever there's like school shootings and stuff like that. A lot of us are very heavy-hearted with this. And that leads to a lot of discussion of how many guns should we take off the street, what type of guns should we take off the street. My question to you is, how do school shootings and preventing these tie back to the Second Amendment, and what would you say would be potentially good addresses for these school shooting problems that we have here?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very unfortunate subject. However, in 2012, the same year that Sandy Hook happened, 3 million crimes were prevented with guns, or 8,200 a day. And I promise I'm going to tie it back to schools here eventually. In terms of schools, in Parkland, how did Nicholas Cruz just manage to wonder his way back on campus? Where's that place in Texas? Uvalde?
Uvalde.
In Uvalde, door was unlocked. Sad excuse of a human being runs in and murders 22 children. Well, I think 2 of them were teachers, but 20 kids and 2 teachers. A life's a life. So, person pulls the trigger. We got to secure our schools. And if you ask me, I think there should be, this is going to sound crazy, I think we should train teachers to carry in schools. They're doing it in Lawrence County, so it's not like it's some brand new crazy thing. They're doing it like about an hour up the road, up I-16. That's just my 2 cents about the school issue.
So just to convince that your solution, you're more or less pointing to like, yes, like guns prevent a lot of crime and
right.
And like if we allow teachers in regards to carry guns at school, that could potentially cut back on the devastation of school shootings.
It's actually happened before where a school resource officer just happened to be nearby. I think it was in Minnesota. He happened to be nearby and he was able to stop the shooter from taking out more people.
I appreciate you answering my question.
And also, the governor of Florida is doing that as well. Governor DeSantis is doing that with all the counties in Florida. All the school systems in Florida are able to, all the teachers are able to conceal carry. And we think, as Turning Point USA, that will prevent many school shootings from happening when you have people that you're almost pretty sure aren't going to commit these crimes, like teachers carrying these guns.
Anyone else?
Would you agree that arming teachers with guns is kind of just like a Band-Aid solution, or do you think like that's like the best answer we have?
So the whole arming teachers with guns things, the teacher can choose whether or not to carry a gun. You don't have to carry a gun.
Oh, no,
It's just like how we also say, Well, you don't technically have to vote, even though you should.
I'm saying that you're proposing this as a solution to the gun violence. Do you think that this is a big solution? Do you think this is a Band-Aid issue, a first step? What would you categorize that as?
So I think, like I said, I think they should be allowed to, but they don't have to. And there was maybe another part of your question that I kind of might have missed.
I'm not asking whether they should be allowed to or not. What I'm saying is, you're proposing teachers should be able to be armed with guns. Like, if that's one of your answers for reducing gun violence, what kind of answer would you say that is? Would you say that's a step? Is that a small solution that we could probably look at? Or are you saying that there's probably other things we could be looking at other than that? Or is that like your only proposed solution?
Okay, I get what you're saying. It's not the only thing, but it's a good step. So yeah, it would be a step. Securing the schools. Making sure there's one way in, one way out, no other doors unlocked. That's how the Uvalde shooter was able to become a car chase suspect 1 second and an armed attacker in another second. Making sure law enforcement is up to training. By national law enforcement standards, they are supposed to go in and confront the shooter immediately. That did not happen in Parkland, where the school resource officer stood outside for over 4 or 5 minutes. Uvalde, they stood outside that classroom for 70 minutes. Somebody can correct me on that. I do believe it was in excess of 70 minutes. So not up to law enforcement standard. We got to identify why these things happen, which is the security issue, and that's basically all I got.
Okay, so this just seems like your answer to reduce, so basically reducing gun violence, the ultimate goal behind that is reducing death by guns. So your answer to reduce death by guns is to increase the amount of guns in that given area.
Increase the amount of guns in the hands of the good guys.
But don't do anything to make it harder for the bad guys.
So there's and this is going to be the last question, but let me get my thoughts straight. Okay. In terms of the felons, technically your due process makes your gun stripped away if you become a felon. Or I should probably word that another way. But in my sole opinion, more gun regulations are just going to hurt the average law-abiding citizen. A criminal is not going to follow a new gun law, let's face it. Especially if they're already a felon.
If someone has an intent to murder someone else, they're not just gonna stop just because gun laws are more strict.
Also, they'll find other ways other than guns, such as knives, baseball bats, whatever.
Knives kill far more people than guns, by the way. Study from 2015, I believe.
Yeah, I had a cousin at Florida State University. She's about a year apart from me. She'd be about 25 now. And she was in a yoga studio in Tallahassee, Florida, and a fella just walked in and just decided he would start shooting up the place. And she was one of the unfortunate ones to get a bullet in the back of the head as she was running away. And she did not live. She was fatally injured by this accident. And I would make the claim that certainly, it's not the gun that injures the people. I have guns. I use them for, hunting purposes for my little hunting dog here. But essentially, what the issue is that we're getting at is exactly what we're getting at with the biological men and women's sports. If you have a mind that is messed up, you have something that's messed up. My uncle, he started a program that is called Mara's Voice. My cousin's named Mara, and it's essentially helping the mental health of people. But how do you address that issue? How do you address that issue? The mental health of people. How do you determine who has good mental health and who doesn't have good mental health? Well, I guess when somebody thinks that a woman is a man and a man is a woman, and they think that it's okay to just kill children, then I would really check to see if, am I in good mental health? And how, if that's the issue, how do I fix it? And there's a little Bible verse that I hold fondly to. It says that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all unrighteousness and ungodliness of men who suppress their knowledge of the truth in unrighteousness. And that is my claim, that it is sin against our Creator and our failure to acknowledge Him that gets us in a state of this debased mind. It starts with things like homosexuality. It starts with things that naturally produce life. I mean, they naturally produce life. It's something that's common sense. And somebody who does not believe these things is given up to a debased mind because of a failure to acknowledge God. His name is Jesus Christ. He came to forgive you of sin. And I hope you'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I believe we are out of time, but thank you all for coming and having great discussions with us. We hope to see you soon.
Like I said, thank you for coming. If you'd like to get plugged in with our Group D, we still have tons of things happening in this semester. We'll have plenty of action next semester and years to come. So now is a great time to get plugged in with TP USA at Georgia Center. Also, we can provide, TP USA can provide you with cool experiences like our conferences, super cheap. So you can literally go to a conference in Tampa, Florida on about $100-something, not counting food expenses and gas. And included in that $100 is your hotel and a good